It starts where it ends, and this is pretty much the last step of this trailer hitch mount system, where we're putting these plastic fasteners back in the original step of the van. So let's get started. We're going to go from no trailer hitch to a trailer hitch and talk about all the bumps along the way. So this is the part as it came from the delivery driver. And first things first, we're going to get under the vehicle and we are going to take off the factory step. And there's 3 bolts, and you're going to need some big wrenches. I'm using a breaker bar and a big adjustable wrench to get these off. Once that is done, you can mount the rack in the same location that the step you have, the rails for the step went into. They're the same length from the port to aft side of the vehicle. The hitch itself comes with 4 bolts, 4 long bolts, so you can put those in on either side before you put any of your metal washers or nuts in. Once that's done, we're going to level this out with our trusty level, and then we are going to put one of our washers and nuts in, but we're also going to use a little bit of this red Loctite to glue these nuts to these threads. So that's what we're doing here. Just getting everything hand tight to start, except for 1 bolt. So these new bolts are 19 millimeters, and the old ones I believe are 17 millimeters. Once that's done, we're going to use our handy dandy torque wrench to torque these down to specifications, which I believe is just about 79 foot-pounds of torque per bolt, which is quite a bit of torque. So use your torque wrench accordingly. We're going to go full Bob Ross here and paint the night sky on this part of the frame that's unpainted. And this is truck bed liner paint.
Bright things happening here. Just some happy little grassy areas back here.
So this trailer hitch was not at all compatible with the stock trailer hitch. Well, there was no stock trailer hitch. What we're talking about here is this step that is really handy for getting in and out of the van, because the rails that hold this to the frame of the van are in the exact same location as the rails that hold the trailer hitch to the van. Instead of trying to return the original hitch and then get one that is compatible with this step, I just figured we could use this as an opportunity for some fabrication. So we get our handy dandy grinder with our cutting wheel, and we cut those 3 factory welds off each one of these rails so that we can put them where we want them. Just imagine you're a space cowboy on Mars and you can't return this thing back to Earth. Okay, so now we're gonna loosen these bolts for the trailer hitch, and we're gonna do that by taking the nuts completely off of them and the washers, all 8 of them, one at a time. Got this little crowfoot attachment that we're going to use in addition to our breaker bar, and we're just taking them off. We actually need to only take 3 off. The 4th one can stay. And after that, we're going to put this rail on that's going to hold the step. And it's about 2.5 inches, maybe a fist, depending on the size of your hands, further out than it was before. And so we're going to get that nice and in place on both sides. And once we're done, we're going to put the flat part of the step right back on these rails, and we're going to weld it right back on in its new location. We're going to give them a little test. We know they're solid, but just in case there's a glitch in the matrix, we'll know when we step on them. All right, now it's time for some welding. Truth be told, I haven't used this welder since I was in high school when I bought it, and that was many years ago. And I've never taken a welding course or class. My grandfather was a welder, and he lost his eyesight and motivation before he was able to teach me. So I just taught myself, and my welds don't look as good as other welders, like, the folks that work at Matt's Off-Road Recovery. But I do the best I can. Okay, so we use the grinder to get the paint off the surfaces we are going to weld on both sides of the step and both sides of the rail. We want good contact there. Okay, then we check our plastic body piece, make sure that looks good. And after that, we're ready to melt some metal. So we plug our welder into the outlet of our camper van's inverter, because we're going to use that to weld this. Use the DC battery system, inverted AC, and then we're going to get started. There might be a conversion back to DC from the welder itself. Let me know if you know that in the comments below. All right, so this thing's not feeding very well, and I can't figure out why. So these first few welds are just not working the way I would like them to. But we are getting some, minimally viable function. So that's good. But I took apart the welder and put a new tip on it, and then it started feeding much, much better. And I was actually able to, get a bead of metal connecting the two sheets of metal together. Just like any good old farmer who's never taken a welding class and just has their handy dandy cheap block store MIG welder. Okay, so one side is done. It's hot like a hot dog, and so we're going to move to the other side and work on it. Next things next, we're going to use a wire brush attachment on our handy dandy drill and clean off these welds so we can get a better look at them and see if they're minimally viable for our application. No one's getting a gold sticker today. All right, these welds might hold body weight, but we want them to last for a long time. So we're going to fill in all those gaps, try and just get a bigger, cleaner blob of metal between the feet and the step. And we are rolling. We are melting metal, everybody. Sorry if this is bright. It may cause seizures. If it's uncomfortable for you, you can just press that bottom right hand arrow. One GoPro lens was pretty permanently melted in this filming, and we rolled on anyway. So you can see those hot embers cooling, and it was about this time that I really started to notice the difference in metal thickness between the foot rails and the step rail. One's thick, one's thin, and that just made it a little more complicated to try and get the metal to stick between the two surfaces and become one part instead of three parts. I figured it out though, just like any good cowboy welder, and I went on to the next weld and then cleaned up my welds and started the painting process. This is the Bob Ross Special Night Sky. Actually, it's just a can of Rust-Oleum truck bed liner paint, and it should do the job. It should slow down the rusting process on all the surfaces I painted and any surface that looks like it doesn't have paint on it and needs more paint on it. And because this isn't going to be seen because it's going to get covered, I'm not really worried about color matching. So I did one coat with this paint and then let it dry, and then did another coat with another type of paint that I had open because I was painting something else in the van. That led us to our last step in this process, which was to put the plastic cover back on. So we took some bolts out that were just in storage in their original homes, used those 3 bolts to get the cover back on, and then we got some plastic fittings that we bought on Amazon and used those to secure the base part of the step back to the metal plate. And it looks good, it feels good. This is a success. What started as a total mess up worked out in the end, and I got to use my grinder and my welder and put my space cowboy hat on. In any case, that's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you around.